Okay, so again, my presentation is seed technology advances. And more specifically, what I'm going to be discussing is really some over-the-top grass control is what I'm really going to be discussing tonight with you. And really, we have three technologies to discuss. And these technologies just didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of dedication from a lot of individuals and as well as companies to make this happen. And so the first slide that I'm going to show you there is an abbreviated history of some key events. And really, we've been working on this technology really for the last 20 years. And it first started with ACCH resistance in Sudan grass being found in Bolivia by a Kansas State research team at their facility. Well, the Kansas State researchers took that information or that knowledge there and brought it back to Kansas. And along with some ALS resistance they have found in the state of Kansas, they developed that technology and put it in some of their lines. And then Pioneer came along and licensed that technology. Well, we had a little bit of a hiccup in 2010 with Bolivia challenging the ownership of that ACCH trait. But to DuPont Pioneer's credit at the time, they hung in there and kept working on that and did get the ALS or the INZEN sorghum technology approved in 2016. And then we had some other companies, Advanta, as well as S&W, got involved, developed their own traits. And now we're at the point where in 2021, really all three of these technologies are going to be available for producers to use this coming year. So the three technologies that we have are INZEN sorghum, IGROWTH sorghum, and Double Team. INZEN sorghum, as Todd pointed out earlier, that is being brought to us by Corteva. It is ALS resistant. More specifically, it's sulfonylurea resistant. The second technology is IGROWTH. It's also ALS tolerant, but it's in a separate subclass, which is important. It's in the amidazolinone group, and that is being brought to us by Advanta. And then we have Double Team, which is ACCH tolerant, or to be more specific, it's FOP tolerance. And that is being brought to us by S&W. Very important on this technology to point out, all of these technologies are non-GMO, and that certainly is important. And we want to remember that. So what I want to do is go through each of these technologies and discuss each one of them. And I'll start with the Corteva AgriScience technology, the INZEN sorghum. The herbicide that'll be used is ZEST that Todd pointed out earlier. That is nicosulfuron. So a lot of growers are going to be familiar with that as accent that was used in corn for a number of years and still used occasionally in corn. So accent or nicosulfuron, ZEST, again, is that product name. This technology was actually approved in 2016. Okay, so it's fully approved and ready to go. And Corteva just announced actually today that they're going to have a limited seed supply of that seed available to select growers in 2021. So it will be limited, but we will see some acres of that planted in 2021. This is a slide that I borrowed from Corteva, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things. If you look at the grass control, or what grass is controlled on the ZEST label, one thing you'll note is the weed size or the grass size. And it's very important, really with all of these technologies, that that the grass be treated when it's small. That's going to be critical, and I'll show you some data on that here in just a little bit. Something else that's very important, if this for best results, we really need to apply a pre-emergence herbicide and then follow that with the ZEST. That is really also true for the other two technologies. And I'm going to show you some slides again that I borrowed from Corteva that I really think really illustrate this. So this particular field was in Hastings, Nebraska. You see the crabgrass, giant foxtail, water hemp, and puncture vine. Very serious problem with weeds and grass in this particular field. Again, this is the untreated. Definitely need to do something with this. So they had a study, and what they did, this is looking at the cinch ATZ at 1.6 quarts just by itself. So no post-treatment here. You can see what kind of control we got. You know, good broadleaf weed control, pretty decent grass control, but there is grass that escaped that we really need to do something about. And so this is where the post-treatment ZEST would come in. And so if we look at the next treatment, this is cinch ATZ, now followed by that ZEST treatment. And now we got a really clean plot. So that's what we're aiming for. So again, really critical, I think, with all of these technologies, we use a pre-emergence herbicide and then come back with our post-treatment to control the grass. So my thoughts on the INZEN ZEST technology. This technology has been fully approved by EPA. ZEST, that nicosulfuron, we've got a lot of experience with it. We know what it'll do. We know it's effective on a number of grass species, but it does have limited broadleaf activity. Now, you can get lucky from time to time and get really good broadleaf activity, but really we want to think of this as mostly a grass herbicide. Something that we are concerned about is sulfonylurea grass resistance. So if you know you've got grass already in your field that's resistant to a sulfonylurea, it's going to be resistant to ZEST. And so you need to be aware of that. Corteva has spent a lot of time in developing competitive hybrids with strong herbicide tolerance. And so I'm confident that once we get these hybrids out into the market, they are going to be good and competitive. And then I think you can't ignore that Corteva has a lot of really excellent regional personnel and advisors, those that can help growers, and I think they're going to be invaluable as we roll out this technology. Second technology is IGROWTH. Again, that's brought to us by Advanta. We have, and again, this is imidazolone tolerant sorghum. So IGROWTH is the name of the trait, if you will, but it's tolerant to the imidazolone herbicides, and more specifically, what will be used is a Mazamox, and the trade name of that is IMIFLEX. Okay, IMIFLEX will be sold by UPL. Some growers are going to be familiar with that product in soybeans as Raptor, or maybe in wheat as Beyond herbicide. Okay, something about this technology that's I think worth noting. This technology was actually commercialized in Australia and Argentina in 2018. So they've already had a commercial launch of this technology. So some of my thoughts on this, well, again, we've had that successful launch in other countries, received a full label in December of 2020. So it's ready to go. 5 hybrids are going to be available, ranging maturity from medium early to medium. It's going to be another year or two before we see the medium full varieties that'll be available. Something that's important about this technology is IMIFLEX has both pre and post activity. Okay, that's pretty important and does set it somewhat apart from the other 2 technologies. It also has some decent broadleaf activity. In fact, pretty good broadleaf activity, really. And it'll be interesting how UPL positions this, whether it's used pre or post, and depending on the particular weeds. IMIFLEX is an ALS herbicide, so you do need to make note of that. So if you do have sulfonylurea tolerant grass, it very well could be tolerant to an IMI also. And so you need to be aware again of having resistant weeds or grasses already in your field with this technology, as well as the INZEN technology where ZEST will be used. Something again about this product, because it does have that pre-activity, it does have decent soil residual, so it's going to last a little bit longer. But I don't think really it's going to be an issue at all, or shouldn't be an issue from a crop rotation standpoint. We'll discuss that in a little. The third technology is brought to us by S&W, and that technology is called Double Team. ACCase tolerant sorghum, and again, more specifically, it's FOP tolerance, and the herbicide that'll be used is First Act or Quazafop. Sorghum Partners is the brand name that the Double Team will be sold under at least the first year or two. First Act going to be sold by Adama. Okay, so make note of that. This is Quazafop. Growers are going to be familiar with that as a Sure 2 that's been around for a long time. Very much a proven grass herbicide, been used again for numerous years in broadleaf crops. We're expecting really an announcement, really any day now, that EPA has approved this, hasn't happened yet, but we are, or at least that announcement hasn't been made yet. So we're expecting that just again very soon. Do need to point out that the Canadian PNT, which has to do with being able to export sorghum to Canada, that hasn't been approved and will not be approved really until later on in 2021. So that is going to require some things from growers that plant this technology. So my thoughts, Quasifop, again, first act, proven over-the-top grass herbicide. We know it does a good job. Grass resistance to the ACCase class as a group is relatively low compared to the ALS herbicides. And so that's a good positive for this particular technology. Very little soil activity, no broadleaf activity whatsoever, so strictly grass control. And then this year, this launch year, S&W and ADAMA will be fine-tuning how to safely use the technology to avoid crop injury and to maximize that grass control in 2021. So there'll be some things a little bit different maybe that is going to be required this first year compared to the way the label will read and maybe later on. So growers will have to be aware of that, and I'm sure ADAMA and S&W will point that out. So expectations for 2021. Very limited sales in 2021 with the INZEN sorghum. There's going to be a few thousand acres of that, mostly in large blocks, 80-acre blocks, mostly in the High Plains region. But that's going to get a chance for growers to really get a good sense of how this technology is going to work. And then with a more full launch will occur in 2022. The IGROWTH sorghum, Advanta is actively selling this seed. They have really a good supply. And so I'd encourage you, if you want to try this technology, to contact your Alta dealer or Advanta, and I'm sure they can fix you up with some seed. The double team sorghum, again, going to be very limited in sales in 2021. Again, similar to the INZEN technology, it's going to be more in large blocks with specific growers. And the hybrid choice will certainly be limited during this initial launch phase. And there will be some restrictions on how that first act, how the herbicide will be used. And then the fact that we don't have that PNT approved in Canada yet, that means that all the harvested grain will have to be channeled. So in other words, it's got to go to a domestic end user. We don't want that to get out to the export market. So that's what we'll have to do with that technology. The remainder of my presentation, I want to make some comparisons of these technologies. And Sorghum Checkoff had the opportunity to sponsor really several trials in 2020 to look at this. So I'm going to share with you some data. We conducted all of these trials with universities, with weed scientists, and we did it all on fallow fields. And that's important to note that. We didn't have any sorghum in these fields because really we didn't have the seed yet available of all the technology. So this was done on fallow fields. You're looking at a picture here of the study that was done in Kansas at Hayes. And you can see what kind of pressure we had in this particular location for green foxtail. So the first set of data that I'm going to share with you is, again, green foxtail control at Hayes. Vipin Kumar conducted this trial. What we're looking at in this particular bar graph is the pre-application of IMIFLEX. Okay, so you can use IMIFLEX either pre or post. So we're looking at it pre in this particular case, and then we're comparing it to Dual, Warrant, and Outlook, which are our traditional pre-emergence herbicides we use for grass control. And you can see in this slide, the IMIFLEX really did a nice job on the foxtail, 50, even 77 days after application. And you can see how that compares to our standard treatment. So bottom line, IMIFLEX worked really well in this particular location. And again, you saw what kind of pressure we had. Here's a picture of that, one of those plots, very clean from a grass standpoint, 50 days after treatment. And you can see what the pressure was on each side of that particular plot. So it looked good. This is another set of data. This is from Oklahoma. And this is on crabgrass control. And again, this is looking at IMIFLEX and comparing it to Dual, Warrant, and Outlook. In this particular case, all the treatments worked well. So IMIFLEX compared very favorably to our standard treatments. Really, very similar efficacy of the crabgrass, really giving us on that 27 days after application, giving us roughly about 75% control. Did a little bit better in this particular test. But bottom line is, I think this product is going to work pre-emergence on crabgrass. This is early post-emergence, okay? So back at Hayes, early post-emergence, the grass size was 4 inches. So we talked about that earlier, the importance of treating it in the grass when it's small. So now we're looking at these post-treatments, IMIFLEX, First Act, and ZEST. And you know, really all the treatments are giving us, after 42 days, roughly 70% control or better. First Act maybe did a little bit better in this particular case on that 4-inch grass, but all I'm doing well. Again, I want to point out, this was on a fallow field, no sorghum present. I would expect if we had sorghum in there for competition, these control levels would go up with all of these treatments a good 10 to 15%. That's what I would expect on that. So very pleased overall with those results. Now, look at this application. Again at Hayes, 12-inch grass. Look what happened to the control. Okay, so very important, regardless of which one of these technologies you use, that you're treating that grass when it's small. You know, this is not a silver bullet. It's not like Roundup back in the 90s when it first came out on Roundup Ready crops, and you could just control any size weed anytime. Not the case. You got to use these technologies correctly, and something that certainly involves is treating the grass or broadleaf weeds, even in the case of IMIFLEX, when they're small. Another set of data, this is from Corpus Christi. This is again on 3-inch grass, but it's on Texas PANICUM, which can be a big issue. Again, this is looking at the pre-emergence application of IMIFLEX, or excuse me, I'm sorry, this is the post-emergence application of comparing IMIFLEX and the First Act treatments. And you can see overall the control was again quite good. The First Act and ZEST on this particular weed, Texas PANICUM, did give us a little bit better control than the IMIFLEX, but that's on 3-inch grass. 6-inch grass, the same story that we had earlier. You wait until the grass is a little bit bigger, you're going to get less control, and that happened in each case with IMIFLEX, First Act, and ZEST. So you do want to treat those grasses when they're small. Getting close to finishing my presentation here, but I wanted to mention rotation restrictions. Really, there's not going to be any issues with rotation with any of these products for our crops that we typically grow. Do need to point out that the ZEST and IMIFLEX, you cannot plant sorghum for 18 months after those two technologies have been used. And that has to do with stewardship reasons, not carryover of the herbicide. First Act, we're expecting, again, once that label has been published and we see that, we're expecting, though, that you will be able to plant sorghum behind sorghum following First Act. Now, you wouldn't be able to use First Act after First Act, or excuse me, double team after double team, but you could potentially plant another sorghum following the double team or the First Act treatment. Wanted to mention just real quickly STEWARDSHIP guidelines, and that's important. Sorghum Checkoff is certainly going to be harping on this, and I'm glad to say all 3 of the companies are certainly on board in promoting stewardship of this technology. The last thing we want to see happen is to lose this technology after 4 or 5 years. We want it to be around for years to come. And so each of the companies have got their guidelines set for stewardship. You're going to have to participate in some training if you're going to use this technology, just like you do some other technologies of other companies and other crops that are out there. You're going to have to go through that training, and that's important because we want to do this right. Sorghum Checkoff, we will be putting out some guidelines on stewardship, and we're going to also kind of look at how these technologies can work together to really enhance stewardship. Some things that I'll just point out real quickly that are somewhat specific to sorghum. One, you know, all these technologies, they're going to want you to put out a pre-emergence group 15 herbicide. So again, Dual, Outlook, Warrant, those types of products, we want to use pre-emergence. Don't use this technology, any of these technologies, if you know you have Johnson grass or shattercane in that field that's resistant to that particular technology. Okay, we don't want to do that. Johnson grass and shattercane are close cousins to sorghum. We know we can potentially have some gene flow, although it's pretty reduced risk in Johnson grass, a little higher in shatter cane, but the risk is there, and we need to know that and protect ourselves from that. So what we want to do is control any Johnson grass or shatter cane that's in that field, okay, that we're treating. But then we also want to control those Johnson grass and shatter cane in the fence lines and the ditch roads, or the ditches along the roadside. We want to control the Johnson grass and shatter cane, particularly right around that flowering time of the sorghum, because that's when the pollen potentially can flow. So control those grasses when the sorghum is flowering. And then control any volunteer sorghum or off types the following year is going to be important. And a lot of you do this anyway, but consider using a desiccant at harvest time to help dry down that crop, but also to maybe eliminate any seed production of some of those grasses that may be becoming resistant or something like that. And then finally, and something we don't often think about, but when you're trucking herbicide technology grain, so any of these technologies and you've harvested that grain and you're taking it to the elevator, we really want to avoid spills along that roadside, because if it spills, you've got seed there in that bar ditch, and you've got Johnson grass and shatter cane there, and then you got the chances for crossing. And so we don't want that. So even consider tarping your trucks to help prevent that from happening, because we really don't want that seed to get out and get loose in the wild.